Great. All right. Well, it's a little after 12, so why don't we get started? Welcome everyone to today's Kelsey Museum Virtual Flash Talk. We would like to begin today's program by acknowledging that we are presenting from the traditional homelands of the Anishinaabe Three Fires people, who are Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi, along with their neighbors, the Seneca, Delaware, Shawnee, and Wyandot nations. We further acknowledge that our university stands, like almost all property in the United States, on lands obtained through generally unconscionable ways from Indigenous people. We live and learn on these territories. As we live and learn on these territories, we must keep in mind the community struggles for self-determination and colonial legacies of scholarly practices. Knowing where we live and work does not change the past, but through understanding of the ongoing consequences of this past can empower us to, in our research, teaching, and outreach, to create a future that supports human flourishing and justice for all individuals. Our talk today will last about 15 minutes, followed by 15 minutes of Q&A with you, our audience. Please use the chat feature or unmute yourselves to ask a question. And finally, as you heard, this event is being recorded. Our speaker today is Dr. Arianna Zapelloni, Pavia, IPCA alum and Casualty Resolution Officer for the Department of Defense, POW MIA Accounting Agency. Arianna focused her graduate work on Italian archaeology, and her 2020 dissertation was on cultural change in the religious sphere of ancient Umbria between the 6th and 1st centuries BCE. Today, she will be speaking to us specifically about her work with the DoD. Welcome, Arianna.
Thank you, Kathy. So I'm going to try to share my screen. Share screen. Okay. Here you go. I think it should work. If I do this, can you guys see it?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So thank you, Kathy, for introducing me today. It's really nice to be, even if just virtually, back in Ann Arbor, where I finished my PhD just 1.5 years ago. I'm, as Kathy said, I'm the Casualty Resolution Officer for Southern Europe at the Europe Detachment of Defense Prisoner of War Missing in Action Accounting Agency, which is located in Miso in Germany. My presentation will be primarily on DPAA's mission in Europe, its history, our team makeup, and operational methodology, and some of the challenges we face in executing our mission. Since DPAA is an agency within the American Department of Defense, I just wanted to refresh on the Department of Defense mission. So the Department of Defense is America's largest government agency, with American military tracing its roots back to pre-revolutionary times. The department has grown and evolved with the nation. The DoD's mission is to provide the military forces needed to deter war and ensure the nation's security. DPAA is an agency within the United States Department of Defense whose mission is to recover United States military personnel who are listed as prisoners of war or missing in action from designated past conflicts from countries around the world. The Defense POW MIA Accounting Agency's mission is to provide the fullest possible accounting for American missing personnel to their family and the nation. The agency's vision is a world-class workforce that fulfills the nation's obligation by maximizing the number of missing personnel accounted for, while ensuring timely, accurate information is provided to their family. When was the DPAA formed? Actually, very recently. On 16 January 2015, the Secretary of Defense approved an executive order that established a new agency by consolidating the Defense Prisoner of War Missing Personnel Office, the Joint Prisoner of War Missing in Action Accounting Command, and the Life Science Equipment Laboratory. So this new agency was called Defense POW MIA Accounting Agency, DPAA, and 2015 was a transition year with many milestones, leading to full operational capability as of January 2016. The agency includes approximately 600 personnel with diverse backgrounds across multiple locations, primarily in Washington and Hawaii, with detachments in Germany, where I'm working, Thailand, Laos, and Vietnam. As you can see from this graphic, 81,900 Americans remain missing from Second World War, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, the Cold War, and the Gulf War. Over 41,000 of the missing are presumed lost at sea. Of these, over 22,000 are located in the European theater of war, and approximately 8,000 are considered recoverable across 36 countries. As a simple math problem, you can begin to grasp the enormity of the challenges DPAA faces. With a mandate of 200 identifications per year and a total of 28,000 recoverable MAAs worldwide, we will be conducting this mission for many years to come, certainly for as long as the American taxpayer and US Congress continue to support recovery operations. Today, as I said, I wanted to focus my talk on DPAA detachment in Germany. So I work for DPAA's Europe Mediterranean Directorate, whose detachment is in Germany. DPAA's Europe Mediterranean Directorate is at the forefront of accounting efforts for more than 22,000 Americans missing from World War II in 37 countries across Europe, the Mediterranean, and North Africa. As you can see in this map, there are different colors because there are different teams. In particular, my team is the gold team, so I work specifically in Southern Europe, North Africa, and the Balkans. So Italy, the Balkans are our main. I'm leaving on Sunday to go to Bosnia for one of these missions. Next slide. More information about how who's actually within the DPAA Europe Mediterranean Directorate. We are a lot of people from very, very different backgrounds, as you can see. There are historians, there are analysts, there are archaeologists, planners, field operators, logisticians, material evidence experts, planners, and we all work together to conduct historical research, field investigations, and archaeological recovery missions, all in support of providing answers to families of service personnel whose remains were not recovered, followed World War II. Our area of responsibility extends to missing service personnel throughout Europe and the Mediterranean theaters. In addition to Second World War era missing, our directorate also maintains responsibility for service personnel missing during the Cold War in the same areas. Our research relies heavily on primary archival records and aerial imagery housed at the National Archives and Records Administration in College Park, Maryland, relating to US military operation and burial of remains during Second World War II. What does actually happen? What do we do to search for the MIA and POW? Thanks to the work of historians and analysts, we target specific locations with two main goals. The first one, which comes before the second, is to conduct surveys to circumscribe the locations of plane crashes. And the second is after the surveys, so sometimes 1-2 years after, we come back to these sites that have been identified, and we carry out an excavation with the goal of finding the remains of the missing military members. As an archaeologist who has been trained in classical archaeology, I must stress that we unlike classic archaeology, we're not trying to reconstruct the past to reconstruct the incident. This is a very targeted search for remains and ID material only. When it comes to excavation of these plane crash sites, we usually avail ourselves of two types of teams. One is called organic team. So I usually join organic teams, and we are on the field for about a little bit more than a month, sometimes even more, 2 months. And these organic teams are composed mostly of a team leader, a surgeon, scientific recovery expert, a medic, a EOD technician who's in charge of, unexploded devices, photographer, and very important is the presence of a linguist as well, because we go to country where in Bosnia we have a linguist. In Italy, I was also working as a linguist. Partner teams are generally are university field schools, NGOs, or by contract, and they are composed mainly by a principal investigator, an archaeologist, and team members, and they must complete training at DPIA Academy at Hawaii. We excavate by unit, conducting excavation methods that follow more into the expertise of forensic archaeology or salvage archaeology, I would say. We sift through all soil type, and usually we do wet or dry screening of all soil. Of course, it depends on the soil type and on the water availability. And we retain all items of interest. Usually, if aircraft wreckage parts are not of any interest, unless, as in the image that you can see on this slide, there are dates, for instance, there are data that can be used to identify the body. Otherwise, parts of the plane not of no interest whatsoever, which was, I was a bit sad on my first survey in Hungary. I thought we would find a lot of very interesting things, but just not keep it. So disregard. What happens when we find unexploded ordnance? This can happen. We have to call the host nation authorities for the treatment of the unexploded ordnance. We have to submit all retrieved material to the host nation police. And after we obtain the authorization, we can repatriate the human remains and the material evidence back to the US. After at the end of an excavation, as in any excavation, archaeological excavation, we restore the site, and based on the scientific recovery expert recommendation, we close it. Just to give you an idea of what has been accomplished in the past couple of years, 2018 and 2019. In 2018, the Europe-Mediterranean cases that have been identified were 30, and overall, worldwide, there were 203 total identifications. In 2019, the Europe-Mediterranean cases solved 30, and 2018 were the identifications worldwide. Here, this is an example of a partner mission. The partner was the University of Wisconsin. They were trying to identify the pilot of a P-47D, who was actually recovered and identified in France. Here you can see his tomb on the bottom left, and on the bottom right, the discovery of the plane's propeller during the excavation. In the same year, this was 2017, in France, an organic team recovered and identified the remains of Canty, who was a B-26 engineer who went missing during a bombing mission on June 22nd, 1944. And here you can see some images of the people working through the soil during the excavation. And here it's Canty's body being brought to Offutt, and where in Nebraska, where there is one of the labs, the laboratory that would then study the remains. I promised I would also talk about the challenges. There are many challenges. The first one pertains permits, permissions, and access. It's pretty hard to have access to all of the fields that we are interested in. But with pride, I can say that the Detachment Europe secured in 2019 secured access to 52 sites in 8 countries throughout 94 landowners and 219 host nation officials. Another problem is the presence of amateur researchers, enthusiasts. There are a small army of these folks across Europe, and truth to be said, many provide very useful leads and conduct good research. But one major challenge is ensuring that we are not guilty by association when many of these folks conduct illegal metal detecting, trespassing, or other illegal work. Another challenge is the treatment of the evidence by the host nation authorities. Many local authorities do not know how to properly treat our sites. So mainly, is it like an archaeological site? Is it a crime scene? There is rarely a consistent approach across regions within a single country on how to treat this evidence. Another big problem is the fiscal year mission constraints versus the crop cycles. Our fiscal year ends in October, which means that we have to wrap up in September, which does not align with the harvest season in many areas across Europe. So as a result, we have to destroy crops and then pay for the damages, when it would be more logical to shift emissions dates to minimize the damages. Another challenge is the damage to or the loss of sites. Many sites are inaccessible due to urbanization, locations in protected zones. Anything is possible. And also how to prioritize the cases, which is a complicated formula based on a host of factors, including family interest, accessibility, host nation interest, etc., etc. Mainly, it comes down a lot to the pressure that the Congress puts, that the family puts on the Congress, and then what the Congress decides to do. In my short experience with DPAA, I faced all of these challenges, for sure. So I can vouch that these challenges are real. So I hope that I have give you a pretty good overview of the end state we hope to achieve at the end of all of this, which is to identify the missing service members and bring closure to surviving family members and friends. Thank you very much. These are a few additional resources for people who are interested, and thank you for listening to this.
Thank you so much, Arianna.
I'm gonna stop sharing. Or I can also keep it. It's okay.
We have one question in the chat. How did you find this job? Yes, actually, I was wondering that too.
That's a question a lot of people ask me, actually. So I have it ready, the answer. One sec. It's funny. On Facebook. So it was very cryptic. It was on, it was in Italian. It was the Archaeology in Italy, archaeologists in Italy Facebook page. Someone posted it was not clear to me for whom it was only clear that they were looking for an Italian native speaker to work for a governmental agency in Germany. And after my PhD during COVID, it's not that I was surrounded by possible opportunities and jobs, so I was just curious, and that's how it started.
Thank you. I just follow up on that. How are you finding the job satisfying and interesting?
Of course, it's very different for anything I've ever done in my life. I was in the university for my entire life, my past 15 years probably. So it's a different type of satisfaction. I miss a lot of things. I miss academia a lot, and I say it all the time. I want to go back to academia. So this job is not my final job, but I find it very interesting, especially when we are on missions. Like, I've started this job in January, and I've already been to Italy twice, to Hungary, and I'm leaving to Bosnia this weekend. So it's very interesting because every time we travel, we meet local authorities, we talk to different people at the American Embassy, the Ministry of Culture everywhere. So it's very interesting to see how these issues are treated differently according to the countries. So for sure, there are interesting aspects, but I do miss being a classical archaeologist.
It sounds really fascinating. We have another question in the chat. Can you talk more about the work in the Balkans?
Oh, yeah, actually, I wish I could. This is the first time I go. We have never worked in Bosnia, so I'm actually going to set up permits, procedures, and how we are gonna work there, because we have never worked in Sarajevo. So the only thing I can say is gonna be very complicated because of the division, the internal division of the country. So there are two authorities we have to interface with. So we are going to both Banja Luka and Sarajevo, and we're going to talk to different people according to the different parts of the country. So I will follow up on that. Kathy, you have to let me talk again next year.
Absolutely. We have a couple more questions. How long does it take from the time you arrive in a destination to when you're actually digging?
Okay, I can give you an concrete example from Hungary. So we were in Hungary for a month in June this year. We did survey only. The excavation is gonna happen, if I'm not mistaken, in summer 2023. So it does take, it's all a question of priorities. There are other priorities for next year in terms of excavations, and an excavation is more expensive, takes longer. So usually when they do the surveys, they always know that the excavation itself can happen in 2, 3, 4 years, not immediately. So it's very important to establish contacts when we are there, so that when we come back to excavate, it's not going to be like a long gone memory of what we have done. But it's important to have point of contacts in there, and to really do all of these meetings with the local authorities.
That actually doesn't sound that different from survey in general.
No, that is true. There is a lot, like for the Italian missions, I was more accustomed to, but I have to tell you, Kathy, the superintendenza, the Italian local authorities, they are pretty, like, compared to when it comes to classical archaeology, where they care, they don't care at all. So they give us permits quite easily. It's not, I haven't found it challenging in Italy if you pressurize them, as you should, because they forget. And
that's funny. We have one more comment. What a cool application of your IPCA degree. Congrats on finding a position doing this important work. It's from Leah Long.
Thank you. Yeah, it's an interesting when I tell people that, I work at Gabi with Professor Terrenato from the University of Michigan, but at the same time, I also work for not my government, but the government of the country I did my PhD at. So yeah, I think that's why they hired me, because I had all of these traits. I speak German, I am Italian, but I studied in the US, so it made sense somehow.
You are uniquely qualified. That's awesome. Any further questions for Arianna? Oh, Arianna, thank you so much.
Thank you, Kathy, for inviting me.
Of course. Thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. This is wonderful to hear what you're up to and really fascinating work. So thank you so much. And thank you to all of our audience for being here today. And I hope you all are having a wonderful holiday season. And please check our website and social media in the coming weeks, because we will be getting out our speaker lineup for 2022 very soon. So thank you all so much.
Thank you, Kathy. Bye.
Bye-bye.